Chapter 58. This venerable one feels a little hazy. As a matter of fact, Moran could usually hold his liquor pretty well. It was just that on this night, in order to cover for his anxieties and fake a nonchalance he didn't feel, he downed 5 whole jars of pear blossom white wine, grinning the whole time, until his consciousness grew hazy. When he was half dragged, half carried back to his room by Shimei and collapsed on his bed, Moran's throat moved. He wanted to call Shimei's name, but habit was a frightful thing. During all those years in the past, the one by his side hadn't been the moonlight of his heart, but the mosquito blood he had grown sick of looking at. The name that came out of his mouth was that of the person he had always thought he hated. Chu Wanning. It came out, all muddled. Wanning. Shimei hesitated, then turned to look toward Chu Wanning, who was standing by the door. Chu Wanning had carried Chu Mang back to his room, and now he walked in, a bowl of sobering soup in hand, just in time to hear Moran's murmur. After the initial surprise, Chu Wanning convinced himself that he had misheard. After all, Moran had always called him Shizun, and it was one thing for Moran to call him Chu Wanning, but to call him Wanning? His mind tracked back to that night at the Red Lotus Pavilion, when they had slept holding one another, and Moran, fast asleep, had clearly called out Wanning, then pressed a kiss to his lips, light as the touch of a dragonfly on water. Was it possible that, in Moran's heart, there actually was a little bit of... Chu Wanning smothered the thought before it could take root. He had always been straightforward and resolute, except when it came to matters of the heart, regarding which he knew well he was a dawdling coward. Shizun. Shimei's bright eyes, unmatched in elegance, looked at him with uncertainty. You? No, it's nothing. Since Shizun is here to take care of Aran, I'll take my leave. Wait, said Chu Wanning. Does Shizun have any other instructions? You're all leaving for Peach Blossom Springs tomorrow? There wasn't much of an expression on Chu Wanning's face. A little while passed before he spoke again. Go get some rest. Make sure to take care of one another out there. And... He paused. Come back soon. Shimei left. Chu Wanning walked to the bedside, face impassive, as he propped up Moran and fed him the sobering soup, spoonful by spoonful. Moran disliked the sour taste and coughed it all up not long after. However, he did sober up enough to open his eyes and stare half awake at Chu Wanning. He mumbled, Shizun? I'm here. For some reason, Moran started laughing, his chuckles framed by dimples. A mortal giggle. Chu Wanning gave him a silent stare. After that, Moran plonked right back out, sprawled on his stomach. Worried that he might catch a cold, Chu Wanning stayed by his side, pulling his blanket back up and tucking him in now and again. Outside the room, a number of disciples weren't yet asleep as they stayed up to count down to the new year. Most of them were gathered inside groups, chattering and laughing, playing Pai Gao, or doing magic tricks. When the hourglass, hanging in front of Loyalty Hall, finished trickling, signifying the changing of the year, the disciples rushed outside to set off fireworks and firecrackers. The night sky instantly filled with silvery flowers and branches of fire. The deafening sounds outside woke Moran from his hazy sleep. He cracked open an eye and pressed a hand to his throbbing temple, but the sight that greeted him was that of Chu Wanning sitting by his bedside, his handsome features composed and impassive. Did the noise wake you up? Chu Wanning asked lightly when he realized that Moran was up. Shizun. Moran woke fully, startled, despite himself. Why was Chu Wanning the one watching over him? Where was Shimei? He hadn't said anything in his sleep that he shouldn't have, had he? Moran snuck an apprehensive glance at Chu Wanning's face, and only let out the breath he was holding when it seemed that nothing was out of the ordinary. The crackling of firecrackers continued outside. The two stared awkwardly at one another for a while. "Do you want to go see the fireworks?" asked Chu Wanning. "Where's Shimei?" asked Moran. They spoke at practically the same time. It was too late to take anything back. Moran's eyes opened wide, startled, and he stared at Chu Wanning for a long while, as if he didn't recognize him. A moment passed in silence, and then Chu Wanning got up nonchalantly to leave, though he turned at the door. "Everyone's celebrating the New Year, so he's probably not asleep yet. You should go look for him." It was only to be expected. Chu Wanning had such a terrible temper after all. Even if he had summoned all his courage to ask Moran to go watch the fireworks together, of course he had been rejected. He shouldn't have said anything. How humiliating. Chu Wanning returned to the Red Lotus Pavilion and sat by himself beneath the haichang tree that bloomed year-round. There, alone, with a cloak draped over his shoulders, he watched the brilliant flowers blossoming across the night sky. In the distance, the disciple quarters were warmly lit. Cheerful laughter drifted over, but none of it had anything to do with him. He should have grown used to this long ago, but for some reason his chest was tight. Maybe it was because seeing the merriment of others made it hard to return to his own solitude. Quietly, Chu Wanning watched the fireworks bloom. 1, 2. He listened to the voices of people wishing each other a happy new year. 3, 5. Leaning against the tree, he closed his eyes, feeling a bit tired. Chu Wanning wasn't sure how much time had passed, but he suddenly felt an intrusion pass his barriers. His heart lurched, but he didn't dare open his eyes. He heard the sound of breathing, slightly winded, and familiar footsteps came to a stop not far away. A young man's voice spoke, carrying a hint of hesitation. "Shizun." Chu Wanning did not reply. "I'll be leaving tomorrow." He remained quiet. "It's gonna be quite a while before I can come back." Still no response. "Actually, there's nothing going on tonight, and we have to get up early tomorrow, so I think Shimei probably went to bed early." The sound of footsteps came nearer and stopped very close. "So, if you still want to, Though Moran opened his mouth, the rest of the sentence was swallowed by the bang of an especially large burst of fireworks. Chu Wanning's eyelashes fluttered as he looked up, backlit by the splendid river of stars in the night sky and the scattering of fire flowers like silver frost. A handsome young man stood before him, pitying and a little bashful. Chu Wanning remained silent. He had always been prideful, and he didn't care for company born of pity. But right now, looking at Moran, words of refusal suddenly wouldn't emerge. Maybe the wine had gotten to him too. Chu Wanning felt a sting in his chest, but also a warmth. "Since you're already here, sit down with me," he said. Then he added, softly, "I will watch with you." He gazed up at the sky with an impassive expression, but the fingers hidden in his sleeves had nervously curled. He didn't dare look closely at the person beside him. Instead, fixing his eyes on the fireworks above and at the boundless night sprinkled with glittering brilliance. "Has everyone been well these days?" Chu Wanning asked quietly. "Mm-hmm," Moran replied. "We became friends with the cute little Shidi. We mentioned him in a letter to Shizun. How's Shizun's injury?" "It's nothing. Don't blame yourself." A firework burst in the sky, scattering resplendently. that night. Fireworks and lanterns lit the sky, firecrackers crackled non-stop, and the faint smell of smoke filled the snowy air. The two of them welcomed the new year underneath the flowering tree. Chu Wanning was a man of few words, but Moran continued to look for things to chat about until he finally grew tired and fell asleep. Early the next morning, Moran woke up, still underneath the tree, with his head in Chu Wanning's lap, and a hefty but soft fur cloak covering him. It was Chu Wanning's firefox cloak, smooth and exquisitely made. A little startled, Moran looked up to see Chu Wanning leaning against the trunk of the tree, deep in slumber. His long eyelashes drooped over his cheeks, quivering slightly with each breath like butterflies in the wind. Had they really just fallen asleep under the tree like this? How had that even happened? With Chu Wanning's obsessive-compulsive nature, he should have gone back to his room to sleep, no matter how tired he was. How could he have been willing to settle for carelessly resting under a tree like this? And this fur cloak, had Chu Wanning covered him with it? Moran sat up, his ink-black hair a little disheveled. He stared, draped in Chu Wanning's cloak, a bit mystified. He hadn't been that drunk last night, although some things were a little indistinct. He could more or less remember most of it, even running to the Red Lotus Pavilion of his own accord to welcome the new year with Chu Wanning had been a sober and conscious choice. Moran had obviously hated Chu Wanning once, but when he'd heard him ask, "Do you want to go see the fireworks?" and when he had watched him turn around forlornly to leave with his head lowered, he had, in fact, felt an ache in his heart. He'd thought, well, they wouldn't see one another again for a long time anyway, and he didn't really feel much grievance toward him in this life. And Chu Wanning was so lonely, so it was no big deal if Moran kept him company till the morning, once in a while. And so he had brazenly come to join him. When he thought back on it now, he felt like he was being really... Chu Wanning woke up before he could finish the thought. "Shizun," Moran stammered. Chu Wanning rubbed his temple, his brows drawn slightly together in the haze of having just woken up. "You haven't left yet?" I just woke up." Lately, for some reason, every time Moran looked at Chu Wanning's impassive face, his silver tongue tied itself into a knot. Moran was stock still for a moment, before suddenly remembering that he was wearing Chu Wanning's cloak. He hurriedly took it off and scrambled to wrap it around his shizun instead. While draping the cloak over his shoulders, Moran noticed that although Chu Wanning wore several layers of clothing, his outfit was still a bit thin without the cloak as the outer garment, especially in all this snow. The thought made his movements even more frantic, and he ended up tying his own finger into the knot while trying to fasten the tassel cord. Moran stared at his finger in bewilderment. Chu Wanning glanced at him and reached out to untie it. "I'll do it myself." After a long moment, Moran said, "Okay," and appended in a mumbled, "Sorry." "It's all right." Moran stood and hesitated. "Shizun, I have to go pack and eat breakfast, and then I'll be setting out." "Would you like to go get breakfast together?" "Pah!" The second after Moran said that, he wanted to bite his tongue and die right that instant. The hell was wrong with him? What had he done that for? Maybe he saw the regret that surfaced on Moran's face immediately after asking that. Chu Wanning paused, then said, "I'll pass. You go ahead." Moran was deathly afraid that he might say something even more outrageous if he stayed any longer. I'm going then." "All right." After Moran left, Chu Wanning sat expressionlessly under the tree for a while longer, before slowly getting up with a hand on the trunk for support. But he didn't make any further movements. His legs were thoroughly numb from having served as Moran's pillow all night. With all the pins and needles, he couldn't walk. He stood there sullenly for a good while before his blood circulation returned to normal and he could finally hobble his way back inside. Sure enough, after spending the night outside in such bitterly frigid weather, even with the haitang tree shielding them from the snow, he still ended up catching a cold. Achoo! Chu Wanning sneezed, the corners of his eyes already reddening. He covered his nose with a handkerchief. Damn it, I probably caught a cold. The Yuheng elder, wielder of 3 holy weapons and the foremost eminent Zongshe, who was sought after by all the sects of the cultivation world. The mere sight of Tian Wen tamed the 4 seas, and the white of his robes bested all the colors of the world. He was such an impressive character. He could even have been said to be the strongest cultivator of the era. Unfortunately, even the strongest person was bound to have a weakness. Chu Wanning's was that he couldn't handle the chill and easily fell ill if exposed. This, when they set off from Sisheng Peak, not only had Chu Zongshe turned small again after the pill wore off, but on top of that he was sneezing and sniffling non-stop. And so, when the feathered tribe arrived at noon to escort them, they were met with Shu Meng, Moran and Shi Mei, who were perfectly healthy, and the pitiful little Shidi, Shia Seni, who couldn't stop sneezing.